chasing the easy life. We're chasing the easy life. We're chasing the easy life. We're chasing the sun tonight. We're chasing the easy life. Easy life.
What's up, guys? So today I want to talk about one of the most important exercises in business, and that is market segmentation. Why do I say this? The reason why I say this is because market segmentation basically defines your perception of the market and hence your approach to the market. A lot of people think that market segmentation is just a fruitless exercise, doesn't really help much, or the fact that they want to service everyone because they feel like their product is generic enough or ubiquitous enough or universal enough that it has utility for everyone else. And to some extent that is true, but it's a very small extent. Most of the time, even if you can cover it, you don't want to. And the reasons why people actually do market differentiation is so that they can focus their resources at the segments that have the highest probability of success. So that's one of the key reasons why people do this. And by looking at it this way, you really gain additional insight into the market. You may figure out that there are segments where you are losing money. It is not a financially viable segment for you with your current capabilities, or you need to change the way you are. So a good example of this is, the differences between clothing brands and their approach, right? So some clothing brands tailor only to the ultra rich or the rich, and then others are more of a, they focus more on the budget-oriented consumer. The reason for this is, if you're focused on budget consumers, then your strategy, your approach, your business model, your operations, everything would have to be streamlined because cost is very important. You need to maintain high margins, and your marketing approach, your approach to sales would then need to focus on volume, right? You want to get as much asset turnover as possible. You need to deliver things cheaply and fast, so on and so forth. But if you're on the other side of the spectrum and you're tailoring to high-end, luxurious consumers, all you need is a few sales because your profit margin is just so huge, right? And then in terms of your contract and the manufacturers that you need to work with, they need to produce quality material. Your cost is going to be higher. The time it takes to produce quality in terms of doing the quality assurance, quality checks, and quality control, all that stuff is going to be higher. So again, that's just a quick example. There's millions of these types of examples across hundreds of millions of companies and industries and so forth. So that's why market segmentation is important from that perspective, and it should be not an afterthought, but one of the first things you think of when you're starting a business, because that is probably the most important point. Because when you're starting a business, you have limited resources, and you want to focus your resources at the market segments that give you the highest return on your investment and time, right? So, and then the other thing is too, is as you're going through this market segmentation exercise, you often discover things you didn't know about your market, and that then leads to additional insights, right? So, for example, if you look at, let's say, why a consumer would purchase a particular product or whatnot. and which ones are more attractive, then you figure out that there may be unmet needs, right? What they're looking at for is different. And then maybe you already have capabilities that align well to that, and it's not too much of an extension of your resources to provide for a higher margin consumer, and maybe that would help you shift your business approach. And so market differentiation segmentation is really an exercise for you to also know about your end users, right? Because otherwise you just view all of them as the same, and we may all know that it's not the case. We're all different people. We may have similar tastes, but with today's technology, whatever you're buying, you can spec a car, you can spec out a computer. It's highly customizable nowadays. So to view everyone as a large bucket or a large swath of the market doesn't make sense. You need to be able to fine-tune, customize, and find niches, especially when you're in a competitive market. So that's another reason. And what I alluded to there about knowing your consumers and your customers, and then being able to fine-tune products, is then it allows you to define product tiers, right? So a lot of times, you just take car companies, for example. They produce those one-offs or very limited edition flagship cars. Oftentimes they don't make money off those flagship cars. The reason why they do that is to create this halo effect. But those cars are tailored for the very high-end tier of consumer segments. It's a high-end product tier for a high-end consumer segments. That doesn't necessarily bring them money. So the reason why they have different product tiers is so they can capture different market segments. So by doing segmentation exercises, it allows you to figure out, okay, which segment do I want to go after? What additional products and product features and functions can I take away or add to create those tiers that can then align well with the consumers and create something important called the product market fit. If you don't have product market fit, chances are you're not going to do well in the long run, and you better figure that out. That's really one of the key focus of most startups, is to figure that out before they go into growth. Because if you don't have that, you're not going to grow, because no one wants your product. Simple as that. So that's important. And then lastly is the valuation, right? Ultimately, depending on what you do, you may need additional funding, you may want to go IPO, you may want someone to buy you out. So how you view your market determines your valuation, right? So if you're saying, oh, I'm competing against Amazon and Walmart at big discount, whatever, your valuation may be lower. But if you're saying something like, oh, I'm going at a niche market for parents who have kids with disabilities, and we produce supplies, or we sell supplies that tailor to this market, and we understand them very much, and we have solutions that are clinically validated, that provide better care for these patients with special needs. You may get off with higher margin business, even though it's niche. The market size may be smaller, but your valuation potentially could be bigger because you're not competing against an Amazon or a Walmart or a Target. That's just a random example I made up. It may not necessarily be true, but you get the line of thought there. So again, market segmentation is probably one of the most important exercises you need to do. I have a video, or I will be making a video on how to do that. It's complicated, like most things in business, but once you get the fundamentals down, you understand how to approach that, irrespective of the industry that you are in. And again, there's no one way, and that's if you watch my other video on interviewing people or being interviewed, you need to think of multiple ways to solve a problem, and market sizing, market segmentation is one of those things where you can approach it in a number of different ways to get at a similar result if your approach is correct. The two or 3 different methods of arriving at the market size or market segment that you want should be fairly similar with a large overlap, because it validates one another. It's a way to to have checks and balances. So always approach a problem in more than one manner, and that's the same thing with market segmentation. But again, market segmentation, like I said, is very important because it really determines your company's approach to the market. Strategies, tactics, so forth. It helps you better understand your consumers, your customers, and then therefore by this deeper level of understanding, you can create a more personal message to these folks that you understand them, because at the end of the day, people buy things that satisfy their needs. You can't satisfy their needs if you don't understand what their needs are. You don't understand what their hopes are, their wishes, their wants, their pains, their gains, and so forth. So market segmentation leads to user persona creation and all these other efforts, because now you define a segment where there are different users and use cases within that segment, because they're subsegments, right? And then this knowledge, understanding, insight allows you to create multiple very well aligned product tiers to capture high margin business and low margin business and everything else in between. And this is a good approach because if you have one product that tries to capture everything, that's not going to work well. So, I mean, if you think about it, right? Even Uber, it's just a transportation company, gets you from point A to point B, starts tiering their products, right? Uber XL, you have, Uber Rideshare and whatnot, and now I think they're even segmenting it even further with some sort of blanket approach where you pay a fixed fee and you get a number of rides and so forth. So they're trying to segment to create different product levels as well. So you have to understand your market, you have to differentiate it, create those segments in order to create different product tiers. And then therefore, because of all these activities, the valuation of your company is different. Not just because you can successfully execute on it, but because your outlook is different. Therefore, you're teaching and educating the market, if you're going IPO, or your investors, the market that they should be comparing you to. So in real estate, it's like comps, right? Comparables, right? So usually when you sell a property in real estate, they look at what other properties in your area, in your lot with the same size and similar year build and so forth, to compare it to, because they want to make sure that you're not selling something that's overpriced and so forth. And for the financial institution who's lending to your buyer the money, that they understand that they are not overpaying for something because they have invested a pretty big stake in the property if someone defaults, right? So it's the same thing. When you talk to an appraiser, you have to help them and understand how to properly evaluate your property. Maybe looking at your property with the other units in your community may not be the right approach. Maybe it's something, a property that's across the street is a better approach, or across the street in another community, or viewing it in another segment and so forth. So it's the same thing. Valuation is contingent on your perception and how you define the market, which is driven by market segmentation. So, mouthful there, but now I hope I'm able to convince you that market segmentation is an important exercise to do. And in future videos, I will show you how to do this. And hopefully we can all benefit from it. You being more successful in creating products, and the rest of us who are consumers of that products can have something and pay for something that meets our needs, and resources are not wasted on at an ecosystem level. So that's my thoughts on market segmentation. Let me know what you guys think about market segmentation, the import that you or your company place on it, and so forth. Hopefully it is high. All right, guys, as usual, I'm out.